Off to Home Depot we go. $3.50 a piece. 2 legs, 8 feet by 1.5 by 3/4. I had 2 shipping containers with me that are just packed with my clothes. I have a portable table, which you saw, duct tape, and a bunch of styrofoam pieces. Okay, so what was my solution here? There were no convenient places to anchor the support ropes. There were no gutters, there were no nothing, there were no screws, there were no light fixtures. So here's my thought. I don't need to be symmetrical, it's only a 12-foot balcony. So, one of the support 8-foot log boards I put right flush against the wall and parked the desk right up against it. On the other side, I just took 2 of the storage beds, put them up against the wall, and then slid the other board in between them and the wall. Duct tape the antenna, and then took advantage of the vertical components of the boards to basically account for the missing couple of feet. Now, I will just tell you that if you ever look at an ARRL manual or an antenna compendium, they will usually say something like, surprisingly enough, bending those ends has not much of a significance in terms of its overall efficiency. Why? Because most of the radiation is done in the middle of the antenna. I will warn you though, if you're contemplating this, I had Fred's tuner. What did I find out? When you bend them, the SWR changes significantly enough that I could barely tune that antenna at about a 2.5 to 1 SWR using the internal tuner on my ICOM. Now ICOMs are great rigs, but recently their internal antenna tuners are not that robust in terms of the tuning range they can handle. But I had the opportunity to use Fred's tuner if it got marginal. As such, it was always close enough that I could stay on the air without any power suppression by the ICOM, so that's largely what I did. Duct tape and styrofoam pieces, though, they're the answer. Why? Well, remember how I told you I bent that 20-meter dipole? Well, I still had to clear the railing, so what did I do? To clear the railing, all I did was take duct tape and a couple pieces of styrofoam, wrap it around the railing, and then have the lead drop on the styrofoam instead of hitting the railing. It was as simple as that. Nice thing about styrofoam, though, is you're in a hypothetical situation where you brought your equipment to operate mobile, but maybe you threw in a dipole. You know how many places you can find styrofoam? All you have to do is just pull up to any audio store, electronics store, hi-fi store, reach into the dumpster, you can grab all the styrofoam you need spontaneously. It's not going to be pretty stuff, but if your intent is to just duct tape it to a wall to support the end of a dipole, it'll do just fine.
I just smuggle those lengths of wood to the hotel, 8 foot.
You know, I was thinking the same thing as I'm walking through the Holiday Inn Express, all right? I want to explain something to you. I went to parochial school growing up. Now, I'm not claiming this makes me morally or intellectually superior to anybody, but research has shown that the best white-collar criminals in the history of America all went to Catholic school. Is it because we lack morals? Hell no, it's because the penalties of getting caught are atrocious. Make sure you don't get caught. So what did I do? Well, thinking as you do, I put on the rattiest pair of pants I had and put on a pair of sneakers that looked like I had just walked through a dog park, right? And made sure I looked like I hadn't showered in 3 days. Left the stuff in the van, and around 6:30 in the morning when I woke up early with the sunrise, simply walked out, looked like a construction worker, grabbed them, ripped the tabs off them, and then just walked with them over my shoulder. No. Little did my parents know what all those tuition payments would buy them. I want to review a couple of things that were not part of my solution, but if you're going to contemplate doing this, they may be part of yours. Again, I lucked out. Enough room on my first facility to put up either dipole, and they worked out well. Here's the other option that you've got, though, and I strongly recommend you look into this. Again, on the tuner that I got from Fred, an MFJ 993B, there's a wire terminal for random length wire.
Yeah.
You'll find that that terminal is going to be on about 80% of auto tuners. Now, what you'll notice is I brought 2, one for 20 meters. That was kind of redundant though, because I got the dipole. Why would I go this route for 67 feet for 40 meters? Well, the 67-foot length tells you everything. There's no way I'm going to be able to string that on a balcony no matter what I do in terms of spaghetti twists and turns. So this is a good logical solution to try if I want to get on 40 meters. It was also good in case I wanted to do an A/B test on 20 of vertical versus horizontal, propagation. But there just wasn't the activity on 20 to justify me devoting much time to it. I will just suggest to you that if you ever want to try that technique, it's very effective. But there are a couple pages that, as a ham, if you just do a Yahoo lookup of recommended random length for ham operation, 2 to 3 articles will pop up that will give you standard denominations that you can use. And although it looks like 34 feet and 67 feet are directly related to these bands, in fact they're not exact lengths, and they're made explicitly that length so they could work across all bands and not have to deal with the second harmonic phenomenon of inducing a very high impedance to your antenna configuration. Everything I brought worked out well. Results. Every contact on 10 meters was a 5.9. There's nothing like bouncing a signal off the Atlantic Ocean. The Scandinavians were coming in like they were next door. You know what is really amazing though? Most of the time when we hear the Caribbean, we're hearing good signals. But a lot of times you're hearing contest stations with extraordinarily good equipment. I was hearing just regular Joe Blows in Jamaica on 100-watt rigs and simple dipoles, and they were coming at 60 over. Because it's a single short hop over to Jamaica. It's probably like 700 to 800 miles. And it was just unbelievable to hear those guys coming in at full quieting. Here's what turned out to be a surprise. There's nobody on 20. Nobody's marking time on 20 meters anymore. If 10 meters is open, that's where they all are. And that's the way it turned out. I tell you, that vertical wire capability, what it enabled me to do, effortlessly monitor bands that I was really there just to monitor rather than try to work. So I did have the opportunity to look at 40 and 80. 40 was dead. There'd be one QSL on the band. 80 would be rendered ineffective based on the high noise levels. So again, it's not like it is up here where 80 is a nice quiet band during the winter. Down there it's got plenty of noise. How about that scaffold wire? I love the way it loaded up. I love the way it put me on 5 bands. Its signal strength was usually a bit better than the dipole, but it was noisy as all get out. So what I tended to use that for was just for a quick scan across the band to see what was there. And I did try using it to possibly try to contact a guy on 20 and a guy on 40. In neither case did the guy ever hear me. I would still rate it probably as a pretty effective solution though, if that was all you had available to you. This was probably the biggest surprise. 9th floor versus 4th floor. Maybe 35 feet versus 85 feet. Virtually no difference in terms of what I experienced. Again, it just gets back to the theoretical foundation that you get a dipole up at half wave. That's all you really need. Additional increments above that will bring you diminishing returns. So it's going to improve your signal, but not in a proportional way. Lessons learned. You don't want to pay balcony fines. Be stealthy. Now, this is what I have learned. Now, it's taken me the last 5 years to figure this out. You're a senior now. You have the right to do stupid stuff. You have the right to make a mistake. You see how this works? Oh, gee, officer, I'm sorry. I didn't know there's a problem with doing that. I've been around a while, frankly, and it's never occurred to me that would ever be illegal. Spoken by a 73-year-old, the cop's going to look at you and go, oh God, I'm going to call up his son. I think I know him and have him come bring him home. There's no use in throwing this guy in jail. It's only going to add to our embarrassment. The senior mantra. Are you ready? Don't ask permission for anything for the rest of your lives. Just do it. You follow me? My wife kept looking at me and said, what if we get caught? And I'm like, you've been with me your entire lifetime. You know I could talk my way out of anything. What the heck's the problem with you? Nobody noticed. That was the key. Did you follow me? Nobody noticed. It's as simple as that. Learn the principles of the cleaning crew inspection, though those people are just doing their job, and make sure every night, when you get off the air, you just drop the antenna to the bottom of the balcony. They'll never see your configuration. You do want to tell them at the front desk, though. Introduce it like as follows. So I'm a heavy-duty IT professional, and I really need a reliable Wi-Fi network, so how good is it here? and just start that conversation and plant in their mind, oh, he's a remote worker. That's the reason he's got the desk out on the balcony. Do you know what I mean?
You're getting all these ideas.
Yeah.
One more thing. Okay, we've caught you. What are you doing on the balcony? I'm a ham radio operator. Have you ever heard of that? This isn't allowed. We're going to fine you for this. Fine me for what? Well, and then they walk out of the balcony. Well, what are they going to fine me for? Did I tape the end of my dipole to his wall? This is the second facility. No. Well, your duct tape, it did damage. No, there's no duct tape on the wall. It's supported by that 1x8 by the storage container. Do you see my outs? I didn't actually explicitly hook up that antenna in the second hotel to anything. It was completely self-configured using my own equipment. I thought it was worth doing. So for next year, just a couple things. Probably add a couple more enhancements to the balcony operation. Sneak my new linear down there. Attempt a POTA operation from one of the parks. I will tell you, Florida's loaded with state parks, and they're big. So one of the things I think that would be required there is for me to really do a good scouting operation this time around to find a good location. But the other thing I was describing to Steve, for anyone who has not been down to Daytona, they still have the tradition of the Daytona Beach Drive. Now let me let you know a secret. This is the story. Whenever you're anywhere in Florida, if there's a guy with a New York accent that claims to know everything sitting in the lobby that's looking for a fellow northerner to talk to, always talk to him. Because when I was down there a couple of years ago, I walked up to the hotel guy who seemed to know everything, and I said, my wife and I would like to do the beach drive. So there's a charge for that, right? And he goes, yeah, it's a $25 charge, but do understand something. That's not very unreasonable, because it's $15 a parking space in the regular municipal lots anyway. So you're really just paying $10 for the privilege of driving up and down the beach. What do you think about it? I'm like, that's fine. And the little New York guy tugs at my sleeve while he's sitting in the wheelchair and goes, come here, I got something to tell you. Yeah. Your wife's handicapped, right? Yep. You got your decal? Yeah. Well, for handicapped people, it's free. No lie. So next year, what I intend to do is I am going to take it to a body shop. And for the mobile operation, have them do the drill in the top of the van technique, which is the only really effective way to do RF mobile. Then once I've done that, I will try it from the sand. But what I'll also like to try and do is just do a simple vertical in the sand with the radials and just be in a position to do a nice A-B comparison between how the configuration of the van is working as opposed to how the vertical configuration is working. So that's just a couple ideas in terms of what I have going forward. Overall, though, I thought it was fun and it was a good use of time. Also understand that my wife likes to sleep a lot. And so this is the perfect way to basically get two different metabolisms lined up. Because most of my operation would be in the morning from maybe 7 till 10, and she would roll out of bed at 10:30, basically for her daily activities. So I thought it was worthwhile, and I would do it again. But again, I'm kind of oriented to that sort of thing. But here's what I would volunteer to do now. Let's specifically talk about your configuration. Is it really all that indistinguishable from what I was facing? Describe it in detail.
Well, on my apartment balcony, I've got a 22 foot Ultimax 100-24
Yes, okay.
foot end fed.
Yes.
And that doesn't it doesn't need a ground. It uses the.
No, I don't.
So then I go to a balun to keep the RF out of
Right.
the shack, and that's been working. And I compare that, my alternate antenna on the balcony is a little Tar Heel HP.
Oh, do you have one
with
of
a
those?
30 with a short
Right.
whip, 33-inch whip,
I know that antenna.
and
yeah.
that tunes 40. No, it tunes 40. Yeah, 40 to 6.
Oh, that sounds right, from what I know of it.
And I used the Tar Heel for several years only, and then for about 2 years, and then I've been using the long wire. And when I go on vacation, I also have a 44-foot antennas.com end fed. Now the end fed works for me because the feed point is at one end of the balcony,
Right.
and so the wire goes out the window.
Okay.
I glued up to the bricks a little hook,
Okay.
and it runs across to the other side, and
Very good.
there's a little bit of foot or so of excess that just hangs on that. So that's been, and that tunes. Then I have I had both the MFJ in 993,
Right.
and I have the other LDG
Gotcha.
kilowatt version, because I do have a linear
Right.
pumping on it, and
And what floor are you up on?
I'm on the third floor. I'm on the third floor facing west. However, on the other side of the building, I'm essentially 100 feet off the ground, because the back of the building
Right.
is completely open, and we're at a base altitude of what is that, 130 feet off of sea level, because we're right at the top of Greenwich, Putnam Avenue, by the
Okay.
Congregational
Gotcha.
Church.
That's a good location.
Yeah, and by the observatory.
Right.
Right. In fact, I've been there 5 years and I haven't walked over to the observatory yet.
Really?
We went once,
No, I've read a lot of
Once, yeah,
writers
was
on the
the-
Ultramax antennas, which are used by a lot of people in the 11 meters world. And I don't understand the theory behind them, but they get out.
It gets
That's all I can
out,
tell
yeah,
you.
I can tune it up, and once I've got it tuned up for the day, I don't even turn off the power on my linear.
And how
I just
long-
click tune. I click tune, and the
Loads right up.
LDG just generally either it's going to tune it instantly,
Right.
and if I hear it, struggling, then I'll turn off the linear.
And the max gain cranks in at what, 18 feet?
The what?
The max gain, or the antenna that you were describing?
I don't know the
saying-
gain. I've worked, the world with it. I mean, I've got terrible reception. When I can get out,
Right.
I can punch out further than I receive, because I can see, I can see where I'm received, and I go, God, I wish I could work that place. But, I mean, I've gotten all to the Middle East, all those countries. I got, obviously, Japan's easy, but, I know Australia and New Zealand, but, they're all like iffy. You
Right.
gotta catch that moment when there's the golden hour for each of these spots.
Years ago, we had a very talented author in ham radio. He wrote a lot of the non-ARR books, and his name was Orr, O-R-R. And I will never forget this. This is one of the first books I read about ham radio, when the nun I had in 8th grade recommended I look into it for a hobby. And what he said is, there are a lot of optimal configurations in ham radio. So you will be challenged by the options and the configurations that you can put together. He goes, but my favorite story about ham radio was watching a New York City cab driver right smack in the middle of Midtown Manhattan work some guy in Australia with 10 watts. Because here's the thing. So many people, especially beginners, will go to a ham fest or go to a meeting, and they will listen to some of the very elite hams talk about their configuration, show pictures of their towers, and not realize that no matter how bad you think your configuration is, you just throw that antenna out there anyway and see what you can get, and most of the time you will be amazed. The only antenna that I have ever despised is I'm trying to remember what the hell the name of it is. But that antenna that's like yay big,
Oh.
and they advertise it, they go for like $200 a band.
Yeah, I know.
There's
what
the
you
single
mean.
band
It's
guys.
really chintzy. It feels like a piece of tin can.
Those
right?
things are utter pieces of shit. Let me
Yeah,
explain
I
how
have
they
one of
work.
those.
You tried one of them?
Yeah, I could barely tune it. It had
No,
a
you know
little-
what they're doing?
It had a little.
They're
wand.
radiating,
It had a little.
but they're also intentionally using a flawed design to radiate off the outer shell of the coax. That's how they work. That is an abomination to an engineer. That's
Yeah.
all I can tell you. You know.
Abomination.
But no,
to
no, the-
manufacturing.
No, the joke used to be that people would say, I've got that antenna, and what I'd like to do is I'd like to have a net so we can talk to like users across the country and compare our results. And
Look,
someone
if
would always say,
China-
yeah, well, you
some-
better use the
some
internet to
company-
do that.
If some company in China tried to export it, he'd probably be executed.
No, really?
'Cause,
Oh,
I mean, stuff coming out of China, it used to be crap, but now
Right.
you're getting like super sophisticated stuff for nothing.
Right.
I bought, case in point, I bought for $15 a device to strip the audio off an HDMI cable.
Okay.
It was a little box,
Right,
that
right.
big. It came with a USB power cord,
Mhm.
and it came with a piece of also fiber optic in case you wanted to connect the fiber optic laser to, and this whole thing was $15, and it actually, it was, you know, those connectors are a little touchy, but if you don't touch it, it worked. I was able to strip the audio because I have an older monitor on the wall, and anyway, I can't get to the back because I just plain, you know what I mean?
Mhm,
Just,
yes.
it's grown in weight. I didn't put it up there, and I don't really feel like moving the whole world to change that monitor, you know?
Other recommendation I would give you is John Pearlstein, if you remember,
Yeah.
was one of the first guys to say, look, I have limited space. And he got that MFJ dual spool job. I don't know how else to describe it. Do you know the unit I'm describing? So you get a wire, it goes into something, and then a wire comes out of either side. And he used it off his front porch. Now, I'm not saying he was setting any world records, but he was getting out. I mean, that's the basic balcony solution.
I tell you what, I'll put together a talk on my little configuration. I think this was
I'd
a
be
really
interested in
good
paying
talk.
you a visit.
I think what was really good about this talk is that this is getting to really what this club ought to be doing.
Oh, I agree.
Is we've had lots of theory talks, and this is the best theoretical antenna, and these
I
are
agree.
rhomboids and this and that, you know?
What you'll notice is I always try to throw in a little bit of theory in there, just for people who
Yeah,
are
but
sitting in
this
here
was
who are about to
good
take the
because
next exam. But yeah, I'm really
Real
about
life,
hands-on
this
stuff.
is real life ham you did. And I think we should, you know, we
I
can
agree.
all, we all have this knowledge to share.